Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. And hello, a very warm welcome to our Canva Live workshop today. All right, so today we're really excited to talk to you about consumer packaging design. It's actually a topic that Beau and I care about deeply, and it's also a discipline that we haven't covered much before at Canva. So today is going to be a really special and interesting session. If you're already in the design industry, you probably know that good packaging can help elevate a new product above competitors. And it also makes packaging stand out on a crowded shelf full of products trying to grab your attention. So to put it simply, good packaging design is key to the success of any product. So first, some introductions. I'm Nick. I'm a design educator at Canva, and I help write a lot of the courses and product education that you can see on our design school platform. I love communicating the power of design to our community. So today I'll be taking you through some useful design principles and theory before handing it over to Beau for some really awesome practical stuff. Over to you, Beau.
So hello, my name is Beau. I'm a brand designer here at Canva. At Canva, we work to inspire our community to design and create. While I work at Canva, I also work as a freelance designer, working with a range of clients specifically in the consumer packaging world. A lot of the work I produce outside of Canva is for some of Australia's craft breweries and some coffee roasters and things like that. So there's a lot of packaging and promotional material on that side. But yeah, so in today's workshop, we're going to talk about some design fundamentals in relation to packaging and how to implement these with Canva. We'll then put this into practice. We're going to create a label for a small brewery and getting this file ready for print. And then finally, we're going to look at how you can roll out a few simple assets to promote your product, both in person and on social media. Now I'm going to throw it back over to Nick, and he's going to take us through part one, some design fundamentals.
Thanks so much, Beau. So before we get our hands dirty and start designing stuff, I think it's really important to take a step back and explore some of the design fundamentals to help set us up. So if you're already a professional designer, then I hope this serves as a handy little refresher. So let's start with one of my favorite parts of design, typography. The world of typography can be daunting with seemingly infinite amounts of typefaces. It's really helpful to simplify them down into three categories that you really need to know about. So first up, I'd love to hear from you all. If anyone can tell me what the difference is between serif and sans serif. Has anyone heard of these classifications before? Serif has tails, one has feet. Exactly, yeah, love it.
Hats and shoes. That's my favorite response I think I've ever seen.
Hats and shoes, exactly. So serif fonts have little tails or hats and shoes on the letters, and they're really formal looking, and they're usually used in print media, very common in print. Sans serif, on the other hand, which is just French for without serifs, are the fonts that don't have the little tails, and they have a much sort of cleaner look. Usually sans serif fonts are used in more in web, and as a much easier on the eyes when you're reading through a screen. Then we have display fonts. They're expressive fonts that have a lot of personality. So think weird and wacky. They're great for titles and very short amounts of text, but not so good for smaller type or long paragraphs, because if you use them a lot, you'll end up with something that looks a lot like this example on the left. Can you even read that? I know I can't. You're much better off using a sans serif or a serif font for long blocks of text, like descriptions on packaging, for example, and then use display fonts sparingly for impact, like in titles and logos. Emphasis in type is another really important part of design. It helps the information stand out. It also lets the reader know what to read first and steers focus, which helps create hierarchy, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Always think, what do you want the audience to read first? This is really important. In its simplest form, emphasis can be achieved in three different ways. So you can use weight, which is essentially like the thickness of the letters, color, you can use size, or you can use a combination of all three together. All right, so we're going to jump into layout and composition now and do a bit of a crash course. So allow me to go a little bit deeper into the theory of design for a moment. When creating any visual communication, there are fundamental principles that really help your design stay clear. And when used together, they can create really powerful, effective visuals. By the way, these apply to all types of visual communication: consumer packaging, social media, posters, presentations, you name it. So you'll actually see from a quick internet search that there are many different types of design principles. At their core, they're sort of like the basic building blocks or foundations of design. So just like you can't build a solid house without good foundations, you can't really build great design without consideration for solid design principles. And I guarantee once we go through some of these today, you'll see them all around you every day. It's also worth keeping in mind that it's possible to deliberately break some of these rules for a desired effect. The key here is that design is not random. Everything should be done for a reason. All right, so what principles are we going to look at today? So we have these 7. We have hierarchy, contrast, negative space, repetition, grouping, balance, and alignment. So these are all really basic principles that are used in everyday design. They're really an essential framework that allows us to make design decisions and successfully arrange elements within a design. So getting back to the theme of today's workshop, we're going to look at how these principles have been applied to some consumer packaging. So when self-assessing or critiquing design, it's really important to assess why it's actually working. So now we're going to have a look at some of the entries from the Gabs Can Design Awards for 2022 and take a closer look at how these design principles are being used. So for those of you who don't know, Gabs Can Design Awards happen every year here in Australia and New Zealand. And basically loads of breweries nominate their favorite designs from the past year and let the public vote for their favorites. We're going to assess some of these nominations together today. The competition's just closed actually last weekend and the finalists have just been announced, which is very exciting. So let's have a look at some examples with a bit of a design lens. So starting with this example here from Atheon Brewing. In this design, there's a really clear line of alignment down the center of the copy. Alignment is a simple and powerful way to organize your elements and text. It's important to pay attention to slight misalignments in your design. Near enough isn't good enough. There are some really handy tools in Canva to help you with alignment as well, which Beau's going to show you in a moment. So there's grids, guides, and the position tool. We'll have a look at that later on. All right, so the next one is hierarchy. In this design, you can see there's a clear hierarchy in our text, which helps us understand what information is important. In this design, it's the headline XPA, and then Reckless Brewing Co., and then finally the tagline and the product information at the bottom, Drink Fresh. It's important to tell your audience what to read first. And in this case, this design wants you to notice the big XPA headline. And then, of course, the green arrows, which feature on all of their can labels. Repetition. This is a really easy way to create texture in your visual design. You can see in this example here from Hawkers, the tones in the colors are repeated, and you've got the repetition of the graphic archway element, which really helps unify the design and creates a lot of harmony. Balance. By using grids in design, in this case, you've got sort of 3 panels. You can achieve order and harmony in your design. So in this example, you can see a really symmetrical kind of balanced design has been achieved by using graphic elements and type to balance everything within the 3 defined panels. And most importantly, the designer has really considered how the consumer will see this label on a 3-dimensional can. So you can sort of imagine this wrapping around the can. It's very, very cool. Contrast. So this design demonstrates really clear contrast through scale, color, and placement. Contrast in type is achieved with color and size, and there's also contrast and scale in the placement of the text against the detailed illustration in the background. Not only is contrast essential for getting your design style clear, it also helps make your designs more accessible to those who have vision loss or vision impairment. And negative space. So grids and balance are really where the magic of negative space are created. It helps draw your attention to the most important parts of your design and gives each element room to breathe. So you can really see with this design, the designer has it doesn't feel too cluttered or overwhelming, and that's very deliberate. And therefore your eye is drawn towards the tiny little figure standing at the top of the snowy mountain. And then there's that subtle leading line that draws your attention down to the logo, Seeker Brewing. It's a really clever and well thought out design. And finally, we have visual grouping. So this is easily recognized in this design. There are 3 clear groupings, which I've highlighted in the pink kind of areas on this design. By grouping the related information together, it helps the viewer understand the information and balances the design quite nicely. There's the branding in the middle, you've got the product story over on the left, and then you've got all the regulatory information on the right. So grouping related information together is also sometimes referred to as proximity. Next, we're going to jump into a little bit of color theory. So I'm sure you've all seen the color wheel at some point in your life, but how much do you know about how to use it? At its most basic, it's a simplification of the color spectrum. It's the primary colors that mix into secondary colors, which mix into tertiary colors, which make up the 12 colors on the color wheel. The cool thing about the color wheel is that it's used to determine what's called color harmonies. And these 4 classifications or groupings of color together. These groupings are based on science, and they're found to look really good when you pair them together. So you can see here we have the first one, which is called complementary, which is essentially when you take 2 colors from opposite sides of the color wheel. So in this case, green and red, usually quite contrasting and work quite well together. Monochromatic is another one. This is actually one of my favorite harmonies. And this is when you take a single color and you add different degrees of tint or shade, so light or dark to that color. And you can get a lot of variation in a single color palette by having just that one color and darker and lighter versions of it. Then you have analogous, which is essentially colors that are all sitting close together on the color wheel. And then finally triadic, which is 3 points on the color wheel, work really nicely together. Now, you don't have to memorize all of these things because there are loads of online tools to help you pair colors, including Canva, of course. So you can check out canva.com/colors if you want to learn more and see a little bit more about the science behind color. All right, we've already talked a little bit about contrast, but when it comes to color, contrast is super important. As you can see on the left, the text isn't really legible at all. The color combination doesn't work because both of them are too bright. Whereas the example on the right, it's a lot easier to read because the colors are subdued and one is light and one is dark. Lastly, did you know that all colors evoke different emotions? This is what we call color psychology. And it's used to impact the way we feel and respond to visuals. And it's also really important in branding. So red and yellow are very often used by food brands because they convey hunger and positivity and happiness. And also bright colors are very handy in packaging for communicating flavors, for example. You might expect, yellow to be lemon. In fact, I think, Beau, you might find the yellow and orange color really handy for your mango sour design later on. Cooler colors like blue can communicate professionalism and security, which is why you see so many insurance companies and banks using blue. But you also need to make sure that your colors are right for international audiences. Culture definitely plays a really big part in this. So for example, green evokes prosperity in Western countries, but it's actually red that will give your Chinese audiences a sense of prosperity. So make sure you do your research when you're thinking about your audience. Okay, so that concludes our crash course in design theory. So now for the fun part, I'm going to hand it over to Beau to share his incredible knowledge on packaging design styles and let him show us how to design a drink can label from scratch. So over to you, Beau.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to take you through some of my favorite packaging design styles. It's not an exhaustive list, but these are my top picks. If you're just starting out, you'll probably gravitate towards one of these styles and just start designing, which is totally fine. But it's important to consider what will happen if you or the brand you're working for introduces a new flavor or product to their inventory, and how will the packaging design scale and flex to accommodate this. At its core, packaging design is about branding. Consumers need to be able to recognize your product on the shelves and see consistency between them. Typographic packaging can be done in a whole range of different ways to achieve a host of different looks. Using different font styles will help convey different connotations. Using a serif font kind of portrays some elegance and flow, while the sans serif emits some immediacy and energy, demanding attention. Normally, we advise like 2 fonts is max as a general rule, but when done right, like the can done by Clint Weaver on the side there, you can kind of get this real immediate and harmonious look, carefully crafted, of course. Starting off with one can is great, or one product is great. But if you're looking to expand to further products in the future, patterns are a simple way to build out instant recognizability while setting up for expansion. As you can see in these examples, the key information like the branding and the logos and things like that, they're all located in pretty much the same spot on each product. And the colors and patterns are the things that are changing across the range, instantly communicating a change in flavor, style, or product. Using illustrations is also a great way to give your brand packaging personality And these don't have to be as wild as some of the examples we've seen earlier. They can be nice and simple, single-lined approaches. They help share your brand or product's personality or contents, like in the ones on the bottom right with Gander. Obviously, it's an olive oil and it's making it a little bit fun. These illustrations are also a great way to expand into the wide world of merch, so your customers and consumers can wear your brand out in the wild on a daily basis. Finally, like a minimalist style. This style really uses the principles of hierarchy and color to its extent, structuring typography in a way that communicates clearly and effectively. They also double down into the world of color, using simple color blocks to indicate product flavors or styles in a simple to digest way. Now for the fun stuff. We're going to jump on the digital drop saw, as the Batuta guys call it, and we're going to crack into designing a label in Canva. So to kick off, we've set up our brand. Our brand is Pika's Brewing Co. A fun little design nod there. If anyone recognizes that, jump in the chat and let us know. We have a brand tagline for Pika's as well. It's nothing fresher than a Pika's. These will be two assets built into our label as consistent brand pieces. And this is the beer we were doing, like Nick mentioned before. We're going to do like a mango sour. We have our ABV, which is a key piece of our packaging because we have to share that. And we also have our bio. And this is a nice time to mention like brand storytelling. The way you tell a story on the packaging is almost as important as the visual aesthetics of the brand. This will not only help communicate features of your product, but also help build connection to the consumer. A great method to defining your own brand voice is to pick characteristics that represent your brand. Is your brand serious and methodical? Are they analytical and formal? Or are they fun and eccentric? Ours here is much more the latter. Not taking ourselves too seriously. We're going to tell a little bit of a story, but we're going to communicate the key features of the product in a fun and relaxed way. Next up, we're going to define the type of label we're going to work on. Best bet for this stage is to get in touch with a printer and discuss your pros and cons of each of these options. Generally speaking, smaller craft producers will stick more towards the label wrap kind of print. I think that's the one we'll see most in the wild. These can have a range of different finishes and textures that help elevate your brand above the standard. You can mix in metallics and spot glosses and embosses and textures and things like that. The other positive for these is you can do them in shorter runs, so they're perfect for small producers. Next up is a little bit more recent. So that's the direct-to-can print. So they're printing the ink directly onto the aluminium. You can go full top to bottom with this. And again, you're able to do this in short runs. And finally, the shrink label. Mainly, you'll see these on the big runs from producers such as, Coca-Cola and things like that. They are generally better for, your hundreds of thousands of millions of runs. And cool. So here's our mood board. I've brought together a range of images with type arrangements that I think would be great inspiration. Notice that most of these are actually anything to do with a label at all. These are just nice type arrangements as reference for when we get into the tools. Speaking of type, I've pulled together a couple of typefaces as a starting point from the editor. And I've pulled together some key elements for the label, the style, the description, and the warning labels for the back. So now we'll jump into the editor.
Nice one, Beau. So it looks like what you've done here is you've created a whiteboard on Canva, which is our infinite canvas feature, right?
Yes. You can collaborate with people outside of your organization and you can kind of drop in different ideas and have different, it's limitless.
Yeah, it's a really great idea for collecting all your inspiration in one place, right? So you can sort of refer back and you've got this huge, never-ending canvas to drop all of your ideas.
Yeah, exactly. It helps me keep everything organized, ready to go. So I also pulled together some line sets that we have. It's like a collection of assets that we have in our library. And I've got what's the name again?
An element ID number. So you can search that in our element library to find an entire collection of matching assets that all work well together.
So cool. We're going to jump over to our editor. We'll jump into the Canva website. So I've also set ourselves up with our brand kit. So in Canva, we can set up our key elements, our brand colors, and our brand type, make them easy to access, and make it hard to mess up or choose the wrong font or logo. So I've uploaded my logos there as SVGs so I can change the colors whenever I need to. I've also defined my color palette ready in the editor. These are also assigned a CMYK value, which is obviously key for us here because we're going to be printing. And I've added my typefaces just so they're at easy access, but also show you how to search for different fonts in the editor. So we'll go back to the homepage. So if you wanted to, you can start out and just search for a beer label. And it comes up with a bunch of different templates that we have in our library. So they'd be a good starting point, or like a good reference point to see like what kind of things you can achieve. But I'm actually just going to create a different design. So I'll go up to the create design panel and I'm going to enter the size, because I've had a chat with my printer. He's told me you need to make this 200 millimeters by 105. And sorry to our American audience, I am not sure what that is in inches.
Yeah, that's a good point, Beau. So you never really have to start with a blank canvas. You can always grab a template. So you've got, some inspiration there on the page. You're not sort of having to start from scratch. I love that you're going to start from scratch for the example today. For those people starting out, grabbing a template and just completely deconstructing it and changing it is always a really great way to go.
Yeah, but yeah, for today, I'm going to start from scratch. Let's see how we go. So yeah, this is our editor. So obviously, because this is a print object, I've got my rulers and guides on, and I've got a print to show print bleed, because that's obviously a key part in printing. So I'll cut off at certain like ranges, but sometimes you might miss by the slightest half a millimeter or something. So we want to be able to factor in that, minor error just in case. Most of the time it doesn't happen, but you've got to prepare for that day. So earlier Nick was talking about grids. And so part of my design, as we looked through with the reference pieces, grids were very important. So I'm going to start building out a rudimentary grid by starting with the square in the center of the page. And I'm going to drag out some guidelines, and I'll just snap to the center of this, and it'll help me build out my grid. It's a little bit of a tedious process to do it in this manner, which is why I've already done that. I didn't want everyone to sit here while I dragged out guidelines. So as you can see, I've already also brought in my label for my regulatory guidelines from the side. These you can access in Australia, at least, from Drinkwise, and I've got my independent brewers label, which when I became a member, that's what they supplied me. And I've also got as we can see, a standard drinks label. And it's live in the editor, so I can update this every time I need to, I put out a new can. It does require some maths though, which is not my strong point every time. Believe me, it takes a bit. And I've also just copied over my key assets, just ready to go. So I've got my Gabs logo that's going to go on the can. I've got my logos here too, and my color palette, just in case I need to refer back to this. But yeah, so we're going to get started. So I'm going to drop in my logo first. So on our side panel, we'll have our brand kit as well. So I've got my logos. Just got to change the brand kit from this one. You can upload a bunch of different brand kits. So if you're a freelance designer, you can build out, or if you're a designer for in a studio or something, you can build up a lot of assets ready for different clients and update their brand kits on the regular. So I've changed it to Peakers. I've dropped in my logo. So I'm going to I kind of want this to kind of wrap around from left to right, this can. So I'm going to align these kind of tops and bottoms to my grid, because my end style that I want, it's going to look kind of haphazard, but at its core, it's going to have this really tight grid to it. I'm going to double click and just bring in my frame guidelines, just because it's a bit wild. And so next, I'm actually just going to hit the T key, so I can start typing. So I've got to have Mango. Let's make this a lot bigger. So we can see it. I'm going to change this to my brand font. So if I hit this text button, they'll come up in the top. So it'll show me my brand typefaces. So I want this to be the Roca one. So I want this like we were talking before, it's kind of like this elegant kind of flow. Actually going to use this one. And again, I'm going to try and stick these to this like grid that we've set up. So I'm going to move that one there. And towards the end, when we finally finish this piece, you'll see what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, I
So
see what you're going for. So it's looking a little bit kind of random and chaotic, but everything is still aligned to this invisible grid, which you're going to turn off at the end.
Like we were saying before, like grids are an important piece in some cases. Like a lot of the stuff that I'll normally do, they're illustration based. So I will generally use like more of like a perspective kind of thing, and I'll center a lot of work. This one, I think like we're well aligned to like try and go this like typographic route for us today. At first, I'd also just like to start in like a black and white, because I don't want to try and like influence my design too much by what colors I've just chosen. Because I want to get some good bones to this first before I actually, fill this out. So we're talking before about hierarchy of types. I'm going to make this a little smaller. Just because it's not the key information that we need. It's important, but it's not the be all and end all of this. And notice how I'm kind of just like staggering this. Just trying to draw the user's eye through the piece from top to bottom, from left to right. So they'll see pieces of this can on the shelf and want to pick it up, see what else is on there, give it a little turn. Cool, so that's my first little pieces. Now I'm going to grab my bio. So this is my description for the beverage, for the beer. So it's going to sit off on the side again. So I'm going to make this long. So I want it to sit underneath. And this is kind of where I'm going to slightly break that grid a little. I want to make this the second one, which is the new Macadam. I can do that. Let's do this. So yeah, so actually this brings us to a good point. In our type panel, we can search for a range of different typefaces. It doesn't have to just be as simple as sans serif or serif. You can search for calligraphy or over sans. You can search for, if you want a wide typeface, you can search for things like extended. And because it's synced to it's Google Fonts, so it pulls in a whole range of different fonts ready to go without having to download a bunch. If you did have a font that you wanted to use and it's not on the library, you can upload fonts into Canva, which is very helpful. But yeah, so I'm going to search for this new Macadam. So I like what it does with this little, it's kind of blocky, but it has this old school, I don't know if we're going to see it too much. It's got this thing's called ink traps. So like back in the day when we were printing on newspaper, type design would have ink traps built into the fonts, into the typefaces, so that the natural bleed of the paper will fill those spaces for us.
What's the smallest point size you should really be using on a can, do you think, Beau?
I think generally when our printers normally recommend to go as low as 6, I will use that for secondary information, like something like our 10-cent refund on the side. That usually is around a 6. I usually keep these around like a 7 or an 8, like something that's slightly easier to recognize from a distance, and just good for our consumers who might not have such great eyesight, like my dad. Cool. So I've got my type set up, kind of. I need to add in my tagline, don't I? Tagline, nothing fresher than a Beakers. Did anyone pick up on our Beakers reference?
I did. It's a reference to digital measurement in design that we use instead of pixels or millimeters. Is that right?
It's digital now. So its origins are old typeset, like Dido, and we'd use it. It's like some 1/48th of an inch or something is a pica. It's some number that I just can't remember off the top of my head. with our typography, I kind of want these lines to be a little closer together. So we can jump up into our top type panel while it's selected. I'm going to change this spacing a little, just so it kind of gets closer together. And the final thing I need to bring in here actually is this. So this beer, this hypothetical beer we've done, it's done in collaboration with our friends at Gabs. And it's just going to be on the back of the can, or on the right-hand side of the can.
Hey, Beau, we had a question about elements. Earlier, you showed us some geometric kind of abstract elements that you found. We're wondering, how do you find collections like that in Canva?
Yeah. All right. So on our side panel, we can just jump up into our elements panel. So elements covers everything in Canva, from our lines and shapes, graphics. If you're doing social posts, you can use stickers. It's got our photo library, videos, audio. I don't think we're going to put a chart on a can, but who knows? Someone might want to put a chart on a can. These image frames, which are also really handy. But down the bottom, I also have all these collections. So these are, I guess, they're surfaced by popularity, or it kind of assesses what I'm doing, which I guess is why we have this drinks package here. If you scroll down, you can see a whole bunch of different pieces. But I found this in this abstract minimalist lined collection. There's heaps more collections as well. So actually, we'll do that quickly. So let's say I search for abstract lines, and we'll come up with a whole bunch of things. And I can refine this down to our graphics. There'll be squiggly kind of things, little paint strokes. We'll show some related searches that people have used to try and find similar items. But I'm going to just jump back down into this because I know where that is. So this is my package that I found. And so if I hit the little three dots, I can scroll down to view the collection. And that's where it shows me the set number. So it's really handy. And I did actually want to bring in something. So I'm glad you actually mentioned that. I forgot about this. I'm going to bring this little arrow thing because I think this will be a little funny little reference inside. I'm going to make another little. So also, as you can see, like we can also change the color of these elements. A lot of the elements are editable in terms of color because they're vector-based. And if you actually see an element on a design and you're like, oh, I want to know where that's from, you can hit this information panel. And it shows you how to find this, or you can see more like this in the elements panel, and you can star them so you can find them easier in the future. And it also shows where they've been uploaded from or who's uploaded this. So this was Sparkle Stroke. So yeah, I'm going to add one little thing in here. This way up. Zoom in because I forgot to. I want to make this the new Mackinac Ultra Bold. Just in case anyone forgets which way this can is meant to face.
Unless you're drinking it, of course.
Well, yeah, then you flip it. Next, I'm going to add something that's a little bit fun. Like I want to have some kind of graphic on this, but it's not in my library. And there's something in my head, but I just can't draw it. So I'm going to use this text-to-image feature. It's obviously a big thing at the moment, AI-based image generators. Canva has one now as well.
Wait, hang on a minute. So you're telling me if I can't find an image that I've got in my head and I've searched and I can't find a photo, I can actually just type in, what I want to look for, and it'll be automatically generated by AI.
AI will generate something for us. So the graphic that I want is an ibis, because don't we all love ibises in Sydney? Eating a mango in the middle of a lake. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to change this. I want a 3D. Let's see and we'll let it do its magic and see what it comes up with. Hopefully something usable. But otherwise we can keep generating different pieces as many times as we want to try and find the right thing.
This is a really cool idea. So you can get completely unique artwork that no one else is ever going to have because it's generated specifically for you.
Yeah, it's generated this one time. Look at him. It's not really eating a mango, but we'll give him a bit of leeway there. The other guy he's eating a real big mango. Looks like a hat. And so I'm going to use these through my graphic. Just like, I want that like, what is this? What have they done? Kind of moment for someone on the shelf. And I'm going to like, just let the type run over these. Just because I want to like really work in that haphazard kind of feel when my type is nice and arranged. But this is just off and it's, you know, a little bit more interesting. I'm just going to just search for one more thing. Let's see what it comes up with. Let's just search for sour mango ale and see what it does. But we'll use surprise me.
You haven't really used any color yet, Beau. Is that normally how you design? You would start sort of black and white and then sort of add color towards the end of the design process?
Yeah, so I like to get my arrangement right when I'm using just type and make sure that this kind of works and kind of flows. Oh, I put it as designed of Can, just using the generator.
Who needs Canva? You just
well, it turns out that's a shortcut. Oh, there we go. We'll use this one. That I was not expecting to do. So it's a little bit fun. I'm going to fit it in here as well. But yeah, I like to get my arrangement right and make it, like, give it a nice feel before I start adding color, which brings me to adding color. So I'm going to jump back up to our elements. And I kind of want this, like, you know, when I see a mango, it's like that green to orange gradient, right? So I'm going to search for gradient and find an editable gradient for us. So again, jump into our graphics. And because I checked earlier, this one is editable. We can see that our colors can be changed up in the corner. So I'm going to make this full, just take up the whole space, all the way that way. We'll work out where it's going to sit in a moment. So like I said, we've got our color palette for peakers. So I'm going to do an orangey corner and a greeny corner. And to me, that feels like a mango kind of, a mango label. And so I'm going to jump up, use our position tool. I'm going to send this to back because I want to sit behind everything. And so obviously now a lot of the black type, we're going to change these as well. I'm going to hold down our shift key, select them all. I'll select the ones that I want to change first. Change our text color. How's that going to sit? Well, I kind of want it to be a little lighter. So I'm going to add a new color. Just kind of just drag this up a little bit, just so it will sit a little paler. I'm going to make this our tagline, the dark green from our color palette. But it's a little bit of a secondary piece of information. I'm going to make our logo the same color using the eyedropper as the typeface that it's done. And this guy on the side, we're going to make him green too. Green and green. Cool. What do you reckon, Nick? Are you ready to export this?
I think so. I kind of agree. In the chat, someone said it's looking pretty overwhelming, but I can imagine once you put this onto a can and imagine it in 3D, it's going to be completely different. It's going to sort of like tell a story where you turn the can around. So I hope you're going to show us what it looks like on a can. Is that
yeah,
what
exactly. I think like on a can, this is going to sit better. I do kind of know where you're coming from. Let's see if we can just, but we'll see what this looks like on a can and get some context to this. I think outside of, I think that's probably a good point, actually. A good time to bring up, like, normally I wouldn't do this in 10 minutes. Normally there would be so much more refinement. I'd be sitting here, be like exporting things and exporting things and exporting things, trial and error, and working out some new things and like trying some features, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. But this part of the process, like exporting it and like putting it onto a can as a mock-up is a great point to get to. So I'm going to hit our share button. I'm going to download the PNG just to do this mock-up real quick. So exporting this page 1 and downloading. So I'm going to jump back over into our Canva homepage again. I'm going to jump down into our Smart Mockups feature. So Smart Mockups is something we have in our Canva asset library, I guess, or it's a tool in Canva. It's a Canva app. And so like if you're designing things, you can kind of put them in context in a simple way, get like a good idea of how things are going to work. So obviously I've used the beer can recently, but there's so many different things. If you're mocking up merchandise, you can see what it's going to look like on body. If you're doing prints, you can see what, books and brochures and cards are going to look like. And yeah, like apparel on different bodies in different ways. If you're doing a cushion or a candle, if you're selling candles, you can see what your label will look like in situ. But yeah, I'm going to go with packaging. And I'm going to go beverages because this is a beverage. And so I saw someone earlier in the chat was mentioning about water bottles. So these principles kind of are the same. You'll have different sizes to work with, obviously. Yeah, so you can work on these, you can mock up a water bottle, see what that looks like and things like that. But I'm going to scroll down. If you're in wine labels, we've got some wine mock-ups, some wine bottle mock-ups or things like that. It's a long way down. Unfortunately, it won't just surface it when I type in what it can. But I'm sure they're working on this.
Got beer bottles as well. Awesome.
Beer bottles. But here's a can. So I did a 375 ml can. This is about the same. So I'm going to hit that. We'll slowly open. Yep. I'm going to select it. So I'm going to upload it. Upload an asset. So in my downloads, I have the label. I'm going to open that. Here's some other. Oh, these are from our uploads. So when I got them out of the text to image, it upload. So added them as uploads. I'm going to select it, and it's not going to sit quite right. So I'm just going to adjust this. So just adjust the image. I'm going to drag it to length.
Right. So you can position exactly how it's going to wrap around that can and adjust the framing.
Yeah. Cool. So that's how I wanted it to sit on the can, because it's a label wrap. It's not going top to bottom. I'm going to save that mockup. Now, before we jump into this next part, I'm going to jump back over the label. I'm kind of happy with how that's sitting. I think on a can, like the colors kind of work a little bit better when it's going to be printed. I know it's going to the colors are going to slightly dull a little bit from a digital print because digital displays so many different, so a much wider color gamut than like an actual print will. So I'm going to jump back over to our label. I'm going to turn off our guides. And I'm going to download print ready PDF for this. So in our download panel, we have PDF print. This principle will be the same for, for a lot of like different label types. A lot of things we can print directly in Canva. So we can print stickers and posters and things like that. But yeah, so I'm going to print this PDF. I only want the first page, CMYK, and I'm going to get it flattened. I'm not going to select this one just because actually, I'm going to select this one because that's what my printer has requested. He wanted some crop marks and bleed. I'm going to hit the download button.
So that's really cool. There's the CMYK options. I know this is, for anyone who's worked in print, this is a really big game changer, being able to work in CMYK colors. So we can print and have actual color accuracy with your designs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it'll knock back these colors just slightly and help it be ready for print. And then you can ship that off to our printer, and they'll have the bleed and they'll have the crop marks, but they'll add a different dial line. There'll be a different dial line to add a rounded corner, and I know that. So yeah, we're going to jump back over to a smart mockup.
Just a question, Beau. What does flatten PDF mean?
It means it's outlined all the fonts. So sometimes when you open like a PDF in a different computer that doesn't have these typefaces uploaded, it will not recognize them and it will just change them to a default one. You'll go to print, you won't like it. Or maybe you will and it's a happy accident. But we tend to err on the side of caution there and actually flatten this, ready to go. But yeah, so we're going to jump in. So this is that smart mockup I just made. And I want to use this in a design because it's coming out and I want people to know about it. and I create a poster. So using this design, we can create a whole range of different assets, heaps of different label types, heaps of different templates. So if you wanted to make stickers, or making a calendar of your product releases or things like that, you can make anything. Well, so many different things. But I'm going to create a poster because I'm going to put this up in my brewery so that people know that this is out and you should grab this. So you post up. It's going to drop in my can, ready to go. And the great thing is it's got a transparent background. Well, the image is transparent. So we're going to jump in our elements panel and we're going to search for product backdrops. I'm going to change this to photos because I want it to look more realistic. So in here, we have a whole lot of different assets that are kind of set up for this exact purpose, to make it look like we've put a product in a shot, we're taking the photos, it's all ready to go. But I'm going to use this one because I feel like it's going to fit this vibe a little bit more. And as I was saying, as someone said before, the can feels a little busy, but this is quite a stripped back minimalist kind of setup. So I'm going to set this image as background.
Whoa, that's awesome. Look at that.
Kind of looks like I've taken a photo of this thing. I'm going to shift it around a little, drop him down. Make sure he's centered he's in the middle, he's in the center because I can't touch that, so that's good. And I'm going to add in my logo. So I've got a centered version of my logo ready to go. Set him at the top. I'm going to color drop this so I can match one of these leaves, just to create some harmony in this piece. And we're going to add a little, it's kind of like a sticker in a way, because it's a fruit. So I like this idea of like a fruit sticker. So, we're going to add this. Get it while, get it while it's cold, because it's going to be in a fridge. Shorten that. I'm going to hit the C button and open up a circle for me. I want a bold version of my new macro. And I want this just to be outlined. So I'm going to remove our centered color. And we're going to add in just a border to this. So a nice stroke on the side. Again, trying to strip it back just a little bit further. And because we've done this in partnership with someone, let's grab let's jump over to this one and grab this logo again.
Very cool. So I can imagine this is an instant poster that you can print and hang up in the brewery, but you might even want to post this on social media.
Exactly. So we'll show you. Give me 1 second and we'll do that. That'll work for us now. I could sit here and refine and tweak things for a while because there's things I'm still not completely happy with, but for the sake of, a little bit of time, let's say this is ready. So I can either hit this print posters button and ship it out and get it printed through Canva, but I actually want to just use this as a social post. So I'm going to come up to our magic resize and I'm going to change it to an Instagram post, a square. So I'm going to copy and resize this. And we'll open up a new document. It's kind of tweaked a few things. Some things maybe we need to do ourselves. I don't need this on here because it's going to be on my Instagram account and everyone's going to know because that's who we are. Make that. Make this a little bigger. Make this bigger. Oh. Cool. So that's probably just about ready to post. So I can jump up into our share button again. I can download this. I can hit the share on social button and link up my business accounts. Ready to go. I can share this directly with here and schedule some posts, make things a little bit easier for me. If I know that this is coming at, say, it's coming on Friday. Friday's going to be a busy day. I don't think I'm going to get time to get out the phone ready to share. I can schedule this and have it ready to go, have it loaded up. But yeah, so there's a whole different array of options to try and build in things. I can make a video with a moving background for this or things like that. Again, there's going to be experimentation, and whatever is right for me is not right for everyone. But yeah, so that's us. We've built a can, we've mocked it up. We've got our stuff ready to go. We've set it up for print. So we're going to jump back into our presentation.
Amazing stuff, Beau. That's really, really cool. I love that you've just gone from literally a blank page to having a full branded can with brand kit. You've got a mock-up there, you've got a poster, and you've even got a social post as well for Instagram.
Yeah, so it's a good setup for us for shipping our first can, Nick. I feel like it's going to go well. Before I mentioned about like experimentation and trying new things, obviously I didn't do this in half an hour, or do all that in half an hour. It took a little bit of practice and like a little bit of refinement beforehand and experimentation with different Canva features. So here's some others that I also tried. So I did these like big type options. I played with a lot of like different distortion of images, some simple layouts, gradients. I even dabbled in some collage work and things like that, just to see what we wanted to talk about in this. So yeah, like, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about this and a lot of ways to tackle a project like this in Canva in certain ways. Lastly, I'm going to share this. So it's the Kodo design trends. So there's a design studio in America. I'm sure plenty of you have heard about this. Every year they'll come up with like branding and packaging design trends, particularly in this industry. Other resources that would be great are things like the Die Line. They show a lot of packaging references, things that are coming out. And yeah, it's just jumping in and having a little bit of an experimentation and things like that. It's nearly time to wrap it up. But before we go, we have some really helpful, or as I've shared some helpful resources.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Beau. I think we do have a few more minutes. We're right on time here, but we'll stick around for a few minutes for any questions that anyone has. So you shared that report, which is really interesting. Do you have any other places that you go to get inspiration online when you're designing?
Yeah, so I generally, because this comes from like a branding perspective, there's an online blog called Brand New. It's run by a studio in America called Under Consideration. And they will like review, branding projects. Obviously, I jump onto Pinterest and things like that, and I have a whole range of different boards ready to go. And yeah, like I follow just a lot of different designers on Instagram as well, because I see different techniques. There's a guy that I follow at the moment, and I think it would be a fun way to like approach a BCAN one day. And he prints out a lot of like posters and things like that, and then like does these natural rips and creates natural textures in that context, and then rescans them back in, and like it kind of creates like this thing that you can't replicate digitally. But there's so many things, like so many design studios and designers and illustrators that I'll follow to keep up with like what everyone is doing, I guess.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really good tip. Got a question here. What's your process when working with clients of a business to create a design? Do you start with the story first? Or do you find what their goals? You find out what their goals are within the product, such as like a marketing cause. How do you approach that collaboration with the client?
That is a really good question. It kind of varies between projects. So like a lot of the work that I do is illustration based for like products. So we'll find out about like, for those kind of purposes, it's a little bit more about like ingredients and flavor profiles and things like that. When I'm developing a brand for someone, we have a lot of like back and forth about and communication about where they want their product to sit in the market. We'll do some market research to see what is on the shelves or what the rest of the market is doing, and try and find ourselves a niche to sit in. So, you know, in this context, a lot of cans might be illustrative based, which is why we went with a really like awkward, fun typographic approach. But yeah, then we'll kind of develop a story for that brand, and then we'll build the brand itself. So we'll build the things that you normally see, like a logo. Then we'll build like some templates and some setups and design some posters or things like that for the brands to promote themselves and define their colors off the back of that. It's much easier to build a brand in that context rather than building a logo and then going, okay, cool, that logo doesn't suit the personality that we want to do.
Yeah, amazing. It's really, really good tips. Well, we've got another question. Just if you could go back one slide and just show us that resource again, we can sort of end on a couple of other resources too. So this is the Kodo Design Trends report. What's the URL for that one? Is it, I suppose you just Google Kodo Design Trends?
I think it's like Kodo Design / stories / design trends or something. But if you go to Kodo Design, or if you Google Kodo Design Be Branding, it comes up. It's the first thing that surfaces. It's a really interesting, like they will assess like what happening in, it's American, but they also have an article about the Australian scene or things like that. And they'll like talk about what they see on the shelves, like what brands are doing, what kind of packaging is coming out. And they'll talk about like different print styles and things like that as well.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a couple of more resources on our final pages here, which we can just flick through now. So there was a question about, I guess, other sorts of recordings or tutorials on packaging design. This is the first time we've done this workshop, so I'm pleased that you got a lot out of it. But if you want to learn more about design in general, of course, we do have lots of different events. So you can go to canva.com/events and see what's coming up there. On the next page, we also have a bunch of resources for small businesses. So if you're a startup or, you know, you're just kind of starting out as a designer, you can find some really cool kind of like business toolkits and really great resources for you and your team. We also have resources for businesses. And this is the YouTube series that we have on businesses and teams. Really great series on how to get set up with your branding, get established as a new business. We also have a design school platform. So if you go to canva.com/design school, you can see lots more tutorials there on all sorts of different design disciplines. So feel free to check those out too. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks, Beau, for sharing your amazing knowledge. That was really cool.
Thanks, guys. I'm surprised I didn't mess that up doing things live.
We loved it. It was really cool. Thanks, everyone. See you again soon.